Saturday, April 1st, 1944. Dear Kitty. And yet everything is still so difficult. I expect you can guess what I mean, can't you? I am so longing for a kiss, the kiss that is so long in coming. I wonder if all the time he still regards me as a friend? Am I nothing more? You know, and I know that I am strong, that I can carry most of my burdens alone. I have never been used to sharing my troubles with anyone. I have never clung to my mother, but now I would so love to lay my head on his shoulder just once and remain still. I simply can't ever forget that dream of Peter's cheek when it was all so good. Wouldn't he long for it too? Is it that he is just too shy to acknowledge his love? Why does he want me with him so often? Oh, why doesn't he speak? I'd better stop. I must be quiet. I shall remain strong, and with a bit of patience the other will come too. And that is the worst of it bowls, just as if I'm running after him. I am always the one who goes stairs. He doesn't come to me. But that is just because of the rooms, and he is sure to understand the difficulty. Oh, yes, and there's more he'll understand. Yours, Anne. Monday, April 3rd, 1944. Dear Kitty. Contrary to my usual custom, I will for once write more fully about food because it has become a very difficult and important matter, not only here in the secret annex, but in the whole of Holland, all Europe, and even beyond. In the 21 months that we've spent here, we have been through a good many food cycles. You'll understand what that means in a minute. When I talk of food cycles, I mean periods in which one has nothing else to eat but one particular dish or kind of vegetable. We had nothing but endive for a long time, day in, day out, endive with sand, endive without sand, stew with endive, boiled or en casserole. Then it was spinach, and after that followed kohlrabi, salsify, cucumbers, tomatoes, sauerkraut, etc., etc. For instance, it's really disagreeable to eat a lot of sauerkraut for lunch and supper every day, but you do it if you're hungry. However, we have the most delightful period of all now because we don't get any fresh vegetables at all. Our weekly menu for supper consists of kidney beans, pea soup, potatoes with dumplings, potato chalet, and, by the grace of God, occasionally turnip tops or rotten carrots, and then the kidney beans once again. We eat potatoes at every meal, beginning with breakfast, because of the bread shortage. We make our soup from kidney or haricot beans, potatoes, julienne soup in packets, French beans in packets, kidney beans in packets. Everything contains beans, not to mention the bread. In the evening, we always have potatoes with gravy substitute, and thank goodness, we've still got it beetroot salad. I must still tell you about the dumplings, which we make out of government flour, water, and yeast. They're so sticky and tough, they lie like stones in one's stomach. Ah well. The great attraction each week is a slice of liver sausage and jam on dry bread. But we're still alive, and quite often we even enjoy our per meals. Yours, Anne. Tuesday, April 4th, 1944. Dear Kitty. For a long time, I haven't had any idea of what I was working for anymore. The end of the war is so terribly far away, so unreal, like a fairy tale. If the war isn't over by September 1st, shan't go to school anymore, because I don't want to be 2 years behind. Peter filled my days, nothing but Peter, dreams and thoughts, until Saturday, when I felt so utterly miserable. Oh, it was terrible. I was holding back my tears all the while I was with Peter, then laughed with Daan over a lemon punch, was cheerful and excited, but the moment I was alone I knew I would have to cry my heart out. So, clad in my nightdress, I let myself go and slipped down onto the floor. First, I said my long prayer very earnestly, then I cried with my head on my arms, my knees bent up on the bare floor, completely folded up. One large sob brought me back to earth again, and I quelled my tears because I didn't want them to bear anything in the next room. Then I began trying to talk some courage into myself. I could only say, I must. Completely stiff from the unnatural position, I fell against the side of the bed and fought on, until I climbed into bed again just before 10:30. It was over. Anna, now it's all over. I must work, so as not to be a fool, to get on, to become me a journalist, because that's what I want. I know that I can write. A couple of my stories are good. My descriptions of the secret annex are humorous. There's a lot in my diary that speaks. But whether I have real talent remains to be seen. Eva's Dream is my best fairy tale, and the queer thing about it is that I don't know where it comes from. Quite a lot of Katie's life is good too, but on the whole, it's nothing. I am the best and sharpest critic of my own work. I know myself what is and what is not well written. Anyone who doesn't write doesn't know how wonderful it is. I used to bemoan the fact that I couldn't draw at all, but now I am more than happy that I can at least write. And if I haven't any talent for writing books or newspaper articles, well, then I can always write for myself. I want to get on. I can't imagine that I would have to lead the same sort of life as Mummy and Mrs. Van Daan and all the women who do their work and are then forgotten. I must have something besides a husband and children, something that I can devote myself to. I want to go on living even after my death. And therefore, I am grateful to God for giving me this gift, this possibility of developing myself and of writing, of expressing all that is in me. I can shake off everything if I write, my sorrows disappear, my courage is reborn. But, and that is the great question, will I ever be able to write anything great? Will I ever become a journalist or a writer? I hope so, oh, I hope so very much, for I can recapture everything what I write, my thoughts, my ideals, and my fantasies. I haven't done anything more to Katie's life for ages. In my mind I know exactly how to go on, but somehow it doesn't flow from my pen. Perhaps I never shall finish it. It may land up in the waste paper's basket or the fire. That's a horrible idea. But then I think to myself, at the age of 14 and with so little experience, how can you write about philosophy? So I go on again with fresh courage. I think I shall succeed, because I want to write. Yours, Anne. Thursday, April 6th, 1944. Dear Kitty, you asked me what my hobbies and interests were, so I want to reply. I warn you, however, that there are heaps of them, so don't get a shock. First of all, writing, but that hardly counts as a hobby. Number 2, family trees. I've been searching for family trees of the French, German, Spanish, English, Austrian, Russian, Norwegian, and Dutch royal families in all the newspapers, books, and pamphlets I can find. I've made great progress with a lot of them, as, for a long time already, I've been taking down notes from all the biographies and history books that I read. I even copy out many passages of history. My third hobby then is history, on which Daddy has already bought me a lot of books. I can hardly wait for the day that I shall be able to comb through the books in a public library. Number 4 is Greek and Roman mythology. I have various books about this too. Other hobbies are film stars and family photos. Mad on books and reading. Have a great liking for history of art, poets, and painters. I may go in for music later on. I have a great loathing for algebra, geometry, and figures. I enjoy all the other school subjects, but history above all. Yours, Anne. Tuesday, April 11th, 1944. Dear Kitty, my head throbs. I honestly don't know where to begin. On Friday, Good Friday, we played Monopoly. Saturday afternoon too. These days passed quickly and uneventfully. On Sunday afternoon, on my invitation, Peter came to my room at 4:30. At 5:15 we went to the front attic, where we remained until 6 o'clock. There was a beautiful Mozart concert on the radio from 6 o'clock until 7:15. I enjoyed it all very much, but especially the Kleinnacht music. I can hardly listen in the room because I'm always so inwardly stirred when I hear lovely music. On Sunday evening, Peter and I went to the front attic together and, in order to sit comfortably, we took with us a few divan cushions that we were able to lay our hands on. We seated ourselves on one packing case. Both the case and the cushions were very narrow, so we sat absolutely squashed together, leaning against other cases. Mushti kept us company too, so we weren't unchaperoned. Suddenly, at 9:15, Mr. Van Daan whistled and asked if we had one of Dussel's cushions. We both jumped up and went downstairs with cushion, cat, and Van Daan. A lot of trouble arose out of this cushion, because Dussel was annoyed that we had one of his cushions, one that he used as a pillow. He was afraid that there might be fleas in it and made a great commotion about his beloved cushion. Peter and I put 2 hard brushes in his bed as a revenge. We had a good laugh over this little interlude. Our fun didn't last long. At 9:30, Peter knocked softly on the door and asked Daddy if he would just help him upstairs over a difficult English sentence. "That's a blind," I said to Margot. "Anyone could see through that one." I was right. They were in the act of breaking into the warehouse. Daddy, Daan, Dussel, and Peter were downstairs in a flash. Margot, Mummy, Mrs. Daan, and I stayed upstairs and waited. For frightened women just have to talk, so talk we did, until we heard a bang downstairs. After that all was quiet. The clock struck 10:15. The color had vanished from our faces. We were still quiet, although we were afraid. Where could the men be? What was that bang? Would they be fighting the burglars? 10 o'clock, footsteps on the stairs. Daddy, white and nervous, entered, followed by Mr. Daan. "Lights out, creep upstairs. We expect the police in the house." There was no time to be frightened. The lights went out. I quickly grabbed a jacket and we were upstairs. "What has happened? Tell us quickly." There was no one to tell us, the men having disappeared downstairs again. Only at 10:10 did they reappear. 2 kept watch at Peter's open window. The door to the landing was closed, the swinging cupboard shut. We hung a jersey round the night light, and after that they told us. Peter heard 2 loud bangs on the landing, ran downstairs, and saw there was a large plank out of the left half of the door. He dashed upstairs, warned the home guard of the family, and the 4 of them proceeded downstairs. When they entered the warehouse, the burglars were in the act of enlarging the hole. Without further thought, Daan shouted, "Police!" A few hurried steps outside, and the burglars had fled. In order to avoid the hole being noticed by the police, a plank was put against it, but a good hard kick from outside sent it flying to the ground. The men were perplexed at such impudence, and both Daan and Peter felt murder welling up within them. Daan beat on the ground with a chopper, and all was quiet again. Once more they wanted to put the plank in front of the hole. Disturbance. A married couple outside shone a torch through the opening, lighting up the whole warehouse. "Hell," muttered one of the men, and now they switched over from their role of police to that of burglars. The 4 of them sneaked upstairs. Peter quickly opened the doors and windows of the kitchen and private office, flung the telephone onto the floor, and finally the 4 of them landed behind the swinging cupboard. End of part 1. The married couple with the torch would probably have warned the police. It was Sunday evening, Easter Sunday, no one at the office on Easter Monday, so none of us could budge until Tuesday morning. Think of it, waiting in such fear for 2 nights and a day. No one had anything to suggest, so we simply sat there in pitch darkness, because Mrs. Daan in her fright had unintentionally turned the lamp right out, talked in whispers, and at every creak one heard "SH. SH." It turned 10:30, but not a sound. Daddy and Daan joined us in turns. Then 11:15, a bustle and noise downstairs. Everyone's breath was audible, otherwise no one moved. Footsteps in the house, in the private office, kitchen, then, on our staircase. No one breathed audibly now. Footsteps on our staircase, then a rattling of the swinging cupboard. This moment is indescribable. "Now we are lost," I said, and could see us all being taken away by the Gestapo that very night. Twice they rattled at the cupboard, then there was nothing. The footsteps withdrew. We were saved so far. A shiver seemed to pass from one to another. I heard someone's teeth chattering. No one said a word. There was not another sound in the house, but a light was burning on our landing, right in front of the cupboard. Could that be because it was a secret cupboard? Perhaps the police had forgotten the light? Would someone come back to put it out? Tongues loosened. There was no one in the house any longer. Perhaps there was someone on guard outside. Next, we did 3 things. We went over again what we supposed had happened, we trembled with fear, and we had to go to the lavatory. The buckets were in the attic, so all we had was Peter's tin wastepaper basket. Daan went first, then Daddy, but Mummy was too shy to face it. Daddy brought the wastepaper basket into the room, where Margot, Mrs. Daan, and I gladly made use of it. Finally, Mummy decided to do so too. People kept on asking for paper. Fortunately, I had some in my pocket. The tin smelled ghastly, everything went on in a whisper, we were tired. It was 12 o'clock. Lie down on the floor then and sleep. Margot and I were each given a pillow and one blanket, Margot lying just near the store cupboard, and I between the table legs. The smell wasn't quite so bad when one was on the floor, but still Mrs. Van Daan quietly brought some chlorine, a tea towel over the pot serving as a second expedient. Talk, whispers, fear, stink, flatulation, and always someone on the pot, then try to go to sleep. However, by 2:30 I was so tired that I knew no more until 3:30. I awoke when Mrs. Van Daan laid her head on my foot. "For heaven's sake, give me something to put on," I asked. I was given something, but don't ask what: a pair of woolen knickers over my pajamas, a red jumper and a black skirt, white over socks and a pair of sports stockings full of holes. Then Mrs. Van Daan sat in the chair and her husband came and lay on my feet. I lay thinking till 3:30, shivering the whole time, which prevented Van Daan from sleeping. I prepared myself for the return of the police. Then we'd have to say that we were in hiding. They would either be good Dutch people, then we'd be saved, or NSB'ers, the Dutch National Socialist Movement, then we'd have to bribe them. In that case, destroy the radio, sighed Mrs. Van Daan. Yes, in the stove, replied her husband. If they find us, then let them find the radio as well. Then they will find Anne's diary, added Daddy. Burn it then, suggested the most terrified member of the party. This, and when the police rattled the cupboard door, were my worst moments. Not my diary. If my diary goes, I go with it. But luckily Daddy didn't answer. There is no object in recounting all the conversations that I can still remember, so much was said. I comforted Mrs. Van Daan, who was very scared. We talked about escaping and being questioned by the Gestapo, about ringing up and being brave. We must behave like soldiers, Mrs. Van Daan. If all is up now, then let's go for Queen and country, for freedom, truth and right, as they always say on the Dutch news from England. The only thing that is really rotten is that we get a lot of other people into trouble too. Mr. Van Daan changed places again with his wife after an hour, and Daddy came and sat beside me. The men smoked nonstop. Now and then there was a deep sigh. Then someone went on the pot and everything began all over again. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5:30. Then I went and sat with Peter by his window and listened. So close together that we could feel each other's bodies quivering, we spoke a word or two now and then and listened attentively. In the room next door, they took down the blackout. They wanted to call up Kufuus at 7 o'clock and get him to send someone around. Then they wrote down everything they wanted to tell Kufuus over the phone. The risk that the police on guard at the door or in the warehouse might hear the telephone was very great, but the danger of the police returning was even greater. The points were these. Burglars broken in. Police have been in the house as far as the swinging cupboard, but no further. Burglars apparently disturbed, forced open the door in the warehouse and escaped through the garden. Main entrance bolted. Crowler must have used the second door when he left. The typewriters and adding machine are safe in the black case in the private office. Try to warn Hank and fetch the key from Ellie, then go and look round the office on the pretext of feeding the cat. Everything went according to plan. Kufuus was phoned. The typewriters which we had upstairs were put in the case. Then we sat around the table again and waited for Hank or the police. Peter had fallen asleep and Van Daan and I were lying on the floor when we heard loud footsteps downstairs. I got up quietly. That's Hank. No, it's the police, some of the others said. Someone knocked at the door. Miep whistled. This was too much for Mrs. Van Daan. She turned as white as a sheet and sank limply into a chair. Had the tension lasted 1 minute longer, she would have fainted. Our room was a perfect picture when Miep and Hank entered. The table alone would have been worth photographing. A copy of Cinema and Theatre, covered with jam and a remedy for diarrhea, opened at a page of dancing girls, 2 jam pots, 2 started loaves of bread, a mirror, comb, matches, ash, cigarettes, tobacco, ashtray, books, a pair of pants, a torch, toilet paper, etc., lay jumbled together in variegated splendor. Of course, Hank and Meep were greeted with shouts and tears. Hank mended the hole in the door with some planks and soon went off again to inform the police of the burglary. Meep had also found a letter under the warehouse door from the night watchman Slagter, who had noticed the hole and warned the police, whom he would also visit. So we had half an hour to tidy ourselves. I've never seen such a change take place in half an hour. Margot and I took the bedclothes downstairs, went to the WC, washed, and did our teeth and hair. After that I tidied the room a bit and went upstairs again. The table there was already cleared, so we ran off some water and made coffee and tea, boiled the milk, and laid the table for lunch. Daddy and Peter emptied the potties and cleaned them with warm water and chlorine. At 11 o'clock we sat round the table with Hank, who was back by that time, and slowly things began to be more normal and cozy again. Hank's story was as follows. Mr. Slagter was asleep, but his wife told Hank that her husband had found the hole in our door when he was doing his tour around the canals, and that he had called a policeman who had gone through the building with him. He would be coming to see Crowler on Tuesday and would tell him more then. At the police station they knew nothing of the burglary yet, but the policeman had made a note of it at once and would come and look round on Tuesday. On the way back, Hank happened to meet our greengrocer at the corner and told him that the house had been broken into. "I know that," he said quite coolly. "I was passing last evening with my wife and saw the hole in the door. My wife wanted to walk on, but I just had a look in with my torch. Then the thieves cleared at once. To be on the safe side, I didn't ring up the police. As with you, I didn't think it was the thing to do. I don't know anything, but I guess a lot." Hank thanked him and went on. "The man obviously guesses that we're here, because he always brings the potatoes during the lunch hour. Such a nice man." It was 1 by the time Hank had gone and we'd finished doing the dishes. We all went for a sleep. I awoke at 2:45 and saw that Mr. Dussel had already disappeared. Quite by chance, and with my sleepy eyes, I ran into Peter in the bathroom. He had just come down. We arranged to meet downstairs. I tidied myself and went down. "Do you still dare to go to the front attic?" he asked. I nodded, fetched my pillow, and we went up to the attic. It was glorious weather, and soon the sirens were wailing. We stayed where we were. Peter put his arm around my shoulder, and I put mine around his, and so we remained, our arms around each other, quietly waiting until Margot came to fetch us for coffee at 4 o'clock. We finished our bread, drank lemonade, and joked. We were able to again, otherwise everything went normally. In the evening I thanked Peter because he was the bravest of us all. None of us has ever been in such danger as that night. God truly protected us. Just think of it, the police at our secret cupboard, the light on right in front of it, and still we remained undiscovered. If the invasion comes, and bombs with it, then it is each man for himself. But in this case the fear was also for our good, innocent protectors. We are saved. Go on saving us. That is all we can say. This affair has brought quite a number of changes with it. Mr. Dussel no longer sits downstairs in Crowler's office in the evenings, but in the bathroom instead. Peter goes round the house for a checkup at 8:30 and 9:30. Peter isn't allowed to have his window open at nights anymore. No one is allowed to pull the plug after 9:30. This evening there's a carpenter coming to make the warehouse doors even stronger. Now there are debates going on all the time in the secret annex. Crowler reproached us for our carelessness. Hank, too, said that in a case like that we must never go downstairs. We have been pointedly reminded that we are in hiding, that we are Jews in chains, chained to one spot, without any rights, but with 1,000 duties. We Jews mustn't show our feelings, must be brave and strong, must accept all inconveniences and not grumble, must do what is within our power and trust in God. Sometime this terrible war will be over. Surely the time will come when we are people again and not just Jews. Who has inflicted this upon us? Who has made us Jews different from all other people? Who has allowed us to suffer so terribly up till now? It is God that has made us as we are, but it will be God, too, who will raise us up again. If we bear all this suffering and if there are still Jews left, when it is over, then Jews, instead of being doomed, will be held up as an example. Who knows, it might even be our religion from which the world and all peoples learn good, and for that reason and that reason only do we have to suffer now. We can never become just Netherlander, or just English, or representatives of any country for that matter. We will always remain Jews. But we want to, too. Be brave. Let us remain aware of our task and not grumble. A solution will come. God has never deserted our people. Right through the ages there have been Jews. Through all the ages they have had to suffer. But it has made them strong too. The weak fall, but the strong will remain and never go under. During that night I really felt that I had to die. I waited for the police. I was prepared, as the soldier is on the battlefield. I was eager to lay down my life for the country, but now I've been saved again. Now my first wish after the war is that I may become Dutch. I love the Dutch, I love this country, I love the language and want to work here. And even if I have to write to the Queen myself, I will not give up until I have reached my goal. I am becoming still more independent of my parents. Young as I am, I face life with more courage than Mummy. My feeling for justice is immovable and truer than hers. I know what I want. I have a goal, an opinion. I have a religion and love. Let me be myself, and then I am satisfied. I know that I'm a woman with inward strength and plenty of courage. If God lets me live, I shall attain more than Mummy ever has done. I shall not remain insignificant. I shall work in the world and for mankind. And now I know that first and foremost I shall require courage and cheerfulness. Yours, Anne. Friday, April 14th, 1944. Dear Kitty, the atmosphere here is still extremely strained. Pim has just about reached boiling point. Mrs. Van Daan is in bed with a cold and trumpeting away. Mr. Van Daan grows pale without his fags. Dussel, who is giving up a lot of his comfort, is full of observations, etc., etc. There is no doubt that our luck's not in at the moment. The lavatory leaks and the washer of the tap has gone, but, thanks to our many connections, we shall soon be able to get these things put right. I am sentimental sometimes, I know that, but there is occasion to be sentimental here at times, when Peter and I are sitting somewhere together on a hard, wooden crate in the midst of masses of rubbish and dust, our arms around each other's shoulders. And very close, he with one of my curls in his hand. When the birds sing outside and you see the trees changing to green, the sun invites one to be out in the open air. When the sky is so blue, then I wish for so much. One sees nothing but dissatisfied, grumpy faces here, nothing but sighs and suppressed complaints. It really would seem as if suddenly we were very badly off here. If the truth is told, things are just as bad as you yourself care to make them. There's no one here that sets a good example. Everyone should see that he gets the better of his own moods. Every day you hear, if only it was all over. My work, my hope, my love, my courage, all these things keep my head above water and keep me from complaining. I really believe, Kits, that I'm slightly bats today, and yet I don't know why. Everything here is so mixed up, nothing's connected anymore, and sometimes I very much doubt whether in the future anyone will be interested in all my tosh. The Unboozonings of an Ugly Duckling will be the title of all this nonsense. My diary really won't be much use to Messrs. Boekstein or Gerbrandy, 2 members of the wartime Dutch cabinet in exile in London. Yours, Anne. Saturday, April 15th, 1944. Dear Kitty, shock upon shock. Will there ever be an end? We honestly can ask ourselves that question now. Guess what's the latest? Peter forgot to unbolt the front door, which is bolted on the inside at night, and the lock of the other door doesn't work. The result was that Crowler and the men could not get into the house, so he went to the neighbors, forced open the kitchen window, and entered the building from the back. He is livid at us for being so stupid. I can tell you, it's upset Peter frightfully. At one meal, when Mummy said she felt more sorry for Peter than anyone else, he almost started to cry. We're all just as much to blame as he is, because nearly every day the men ask whether the door's been unbolted, and, just today, no one did. Perhaps I shall be able to console him a bit later on. I would so love to help him. Yours, Anne. Sunday morning, just before 11 o'clock, April 16th, 1944. Darlingest Kitty, remember yesterday's date, for it is a very important day in my life. Surely it is a great day for every girl when she receives her first kiss? Well, then, It is just as important for me too. Brain's kiss on my right cheek doesn't count anymore, likewise the one from Mr. Walker on my right hand. How did I suddenly come by this kiss? Well, I will tell you. Yesterday evening at 8 o'clock I was sitting with Peter on his divan. It wasn't long before his arm went round me. "Let's move up a bit," I said, "then I don't bump my head against the cupboard." He moved up, almost into the corner. I laid my arm under his and across his back, and he just about buried me because his arm was hanging on my shoulder. Now we've sat like this on other occasions, but never so close together as yesterday. He held me firmly against him, my left shoulder against his chest. Already my heart began to beat faster, but we had not finished yet. He didn't rest until my head was on his shoulder and his against it. When I sat upright again after about 5 minutes, he soon took my head in his hands and laid it against him once more. Oh, it was so lovely. I couldn't talk much. The joy was too great. He stroked my cheek and arm a bit awkwardly, played with my curls, and our heads lay touching most of the time. I can't tell you, Kitty, the feeling that ran through me all the while. I was too happy for words, and I believe he was as well. We got up at 8:30. Peter put on his gym shoes so that when he toured the house he wouldn't make a noise, and I stood beside him. How it came about so suddenly, I don't know, but before we went downstairs, he kissed me, through my hair, half on my left cheek, half on my ear. I tore downstairs without looking round, and am simply longing for today. Yours, Anne. Monday, April 17th, 1944. Dear Kitty, do you think that Daddy and Mummy would approve of my sitting and kissing a boy on a divan, a boy of 17 and a half and a girl of just under 15? I don't really think they would, but I must rely on myself over this. It is so quiet and peaceful to lie in his arms and to dream. It is so thrilling to feel his cheek against mine. It is so lovely to know that there is someone waiting for me. But there is indeed a big but, because will Peter be content to leave it at this? I haven't forgotten his promise already, but he is a boy. I know myself that I'm starting very soon, not even 15, and so independent already. It's certainly hard for other people to understand. I know almost for certain that Margot would never kiss a boy unless there had been some talk of an engagement or marriage, but neither Peter nor I have anything like that in mind. I'm sure, too, that Mummy never touched a man before Daddy. What would my girlfriends say about it if they knew that I lay in Peter's arms, my heart against his chest, my head on his shoulder, and with his head against mine? Oh, and how scandalous. But honestly, I don't think it is. We are shut up here, shut away from the world, in fear and anxiety, especially just lately. Why, then, should we who love each other remain apart? Why should we wait until we've reached a suitable age? Why should we bother? I have taken it upon myself to look after myself. He would never want to cause me sorrow or pain. Why shouldn't I follow the way my heart leads me, if it makes us both happy? All the same, Kitty, I believe you can sense that I'm in doubt. I think it must be my honesty which rebels against doing anything on the sly. Do you think it's my duty to tell Daddy what I'm doing? Do you think we should share our secret with a third person? A lot of the beauty would be lost, but would my conscience feel happier? I will discuss it with him. Oh, yes, there's still so much I want to talk to him about, for I don't see the use of only just cuddling each other. To exchange our thoughts, that shows confidence and faith in each other. We would both be sure to profit by it. Yours, Anne. Tuesday, April 13th, 1944. Dear Kitty, everything goes well here. Daddy's just said that he definitely expects large-scale operations to take place before the 20th of May, both in Russia and Italy, and also in the West. I find it more and more difficult to imagine our liberation from here. Yesterday, Peter and I finally got down to our talk, which had already been put off for at least 10 days. I explained everything about girls to him and didn't hesitate to discuss the most intimate things. The evening ended by each giving the other a kiss, just about beside my mouth. It's really a lovely feeling. Perhaps I'll take my diary up there sometime, to go more deeply into things for once. I don't get any satisfaction out of lying in each other's arms day in, day out, and would so like to feel that he's the same. We are having a superb spring after our long, lingering winter. April is really glorious, not too hot and not too cold, with little showers now and then. Our chestnut tree is already quite greenish, and you can even see little blooms here and there. Ellie gave us a treat on Saturday by bringing 4 bunches of flowers, 3 bunches of narcissus, and 1 of grape hyacinths, the latter being for me. I must do some algebra. Kitty, goodbye. Yours, Anne. Wednesday, April 19th, 1944. My darling, is there anything more beautiful in the world than to sit before an open window and enjoy nature, to listen to the birds singing, feel the sun on your cheeks, and have a darling boy in your arms? It is so soothing and peaceful to feel his arms around me, to know that he is close by and yet to remain silent. It can't be bad, for this tranquility is good. Oh, never to be disturbed again, not even by Muschi. Yours, Anne. Friday, April 21st, 1944. Dear Kitty, yesterday afternoon I was lying in bed with a sore throat, but since I was already bored on the first day and did not have a temperature, I got up again today. It's the 18th birthday of Her Royal Highness Princess Elizabeth of York. The BBC has said that she will not be declared of age yet, though it's usually the case with royal children. We have been asking ourselves what prince this beauty is going to marry, but cannot think of anyone suitable. Perhaps her sister, Princess Margaret Rose, can have Prince Baudouin of Belgium one day. Here we are having one misfortune after another. Scarcely had the outside doors been strengthened than the warehouse man appeared again. In all probability, it was he who stole the potato meal and wants to put the blame onto Ellie's shoulders. The whole secret annex is understandably bed up again. Ellie is beside herself with anger. I want to send into some paper or other to see if they will take one of my stories, under a pseudonym, of course. Till next time, darling. Yours, Anne. Tuesday, April 25th, 1944. Dear Kitty, Dussel has not been on speaking terms with Van Daan for 10 days, and just because, ever since the burglary, a whole lot of fresh security measures have been made that don't suit him. He maintains that Van Daan has been shouting at him. Everything here happens upside down, he told me. I am going to speak to your father about it. He is not supposed to sit in the office downstairs on Saturday afternoons and Sundays anymore, but he goes on doing it just the same. Van Daan was furious and father went downstairs to talk to him. Naturally, he kept on inventing excuses, but this time he could not get around even father. Father now talks to him as little as possible, as Dussel has insulted him. None of us know in what way, but it must have been very bad. I have written a lovely story called Blur, the Explorer, which pleased the 3 to whom I read it very much. Yours, Anne. Thursday, April 27th, 1944. Dear Kitty, Mrs. Van Daan was in such a bad mood this morning, nothing but complaints. First, there's her cold, and she can't get any lozenges, and so much nose-blowing is unendurable. Next, it's that the sun's not shining, that the invasion doesn't come, that we can't look out of the windows, etc., etc. We all had to laugh at her, and she was sporting enough to join in. At the moment I'm reading The Emperor Charles V, written by a professor at Göttingen University. He worked at the book for 40 years. I read 50 pages in 5 days. It's impossible to do more. The book has 598 pages, so now you can work out how long it will take me, and there is a second volume to follow. But very interesting. What doesn't a schoolgirl get to know in a single day? Take me, for example. First, I translated a piece from Dutch into English about Nelson's last battle. After that, I went through some more of Peter the Great's war against Norway, 1700 to 1721, Charles XII, Augustus the Strong, Stanislas Leczinski, Mazeppa, von Gors, Brandenburg, Pomerania, and Denmark, plus the usual dates. After that I landed up in Brazil, read about Bahia tobacco, the abundance of coffee, and the 1.5 million inhabitants of Rio de Janeiro, of Pernambuco and Sao Paulo, not forgetting the river Amazon, about Negroes, mulattoes, mestizos, whites, more than 50% of the population being illiterate, and the malaria. As there was still some time left, I quickly ran through a family tree. Jan the Elder, Willem Lodewijk, Ernst Casimir I, Hendrik Casimir I, right up to the little Marguerite Francisca, born in 1943 in Ottawa. 12 o'clock, in the attic, I continued my program with the history of the church view. till 1 o'clock. Just after 2, the poor child sat working. Again, this time studying narrow and broad-nosed monkeys. Kitty, tell me quickly how many toes a hippopotamus has. I then followed the Bible, Noah and the Ark, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. After that, Charles V. Then with Peter, the Colonel in English, by Thackeray. Heard my French verbs and then compared the Mississippi with the Missouri. I've still got a cold and have given it to Margot as well as to Mummy and Daddy. As long as Peter doesn't get it. He called me his El Dorado and wanted a kiss. Of course, I couldn't. Funny boy. But still, he's a darling. Enough for today, goodbye. Yours, Anne. Friday, April 28th, 1944. Dear Kitty, I have never forgotten my dream about Peter Wessel. See beginning of January. If I think of it, I can still feel his cheek against mine now and recall that lovely feeling that made everything good. Sometimes I have had the same feeling here with Peter, but never to such an extent, until yesterday, when we were, as usual, sitting on the divan, our arms around each other's waists. Then suddenly the ordinary and slipped away and a second and took her place, a second and who is not reckless and jocular, but one who just wants to love and be gentle. I sat pressed closely against him and felt a wave of emotion come over me. Tears sprang into my eyes. The left one trickled onto his dungarees. The right one ran down my nose and also fell onto his dungarees. Did he notice? He made no move or sign to show that he did. I wonder if he feels the same as I do? He hardly said a word. Does he know that he has 2 Annas before him? These questions must remain unanswered. At 8:30 I stood up and went to the window, where we always say goodbye. I was still trembling, I was still a number 2. He came towards me. I flung my arms around his neck and gave him a kiss on his left cheek, and was about to kiss the other cheek, when my lips met his and we pressed them together. In a whirl we were clasped in each other's arms again and again, never to leave off. Oh, Peter does so need tenderness. For the first time in his life, he has discovered a girl, has seen for the first time that even the most irritating girls have another side to them, that they have hearts and can be different when you are alone with them. For the first time in his life, he has given of himself and, having never had a boy or girlfriend in his life before, shown his real self. Now we have found each other. For that matter, I didn't know him either, like him having never had a trusted friend, and this is what it has come to. Once more there is a question which gives me no peace. Is it right? Is it right that I should have yielded so soon, that I am so ardent, just as ardent and eager as Peter himself? May I, a girl, let myself go to this extent? There is but one answer. One have longed so much, and for so long I am so lonely, and now I have found consolation. In the mornings we just behave in an ordinary way, in the afternoons more or less so, except just occasionally, but in the evenings the suppressed longings of the whole day, the happiness and the blissful memories of all the previous occasions come to the surface, and we only think of each other. Every evening. After the last kiss, I would like to dash away, not to look into his eyes any more, away, alone in the darkness. And what do I have to face when I reach the bottom of thy staircase? Bright lights, questions, and laughter. I have to swallow it all and not show a thing. My heart still feels too much. I can't get over a shock such as I received yesterday all at once. The Aunt who is gentle shows herself too little anyway, and therefore will not allow herself to be suddenly driven into the background. Peter has touched my emotions more deeply than anyone has ever done before except in my dreams. Peter has taken possession of me and turned me inside out. Surely it goes without saying that anyone would require a rest and a little while to recover from such an upheaval. Oh, Peter, what have you done to me? What do you want of me? Where will this lead USR? Oh, now I understand Ellie. Now that I am going through this myself, now I understand her doubt. If I were older and he should ask me to marry him, what should I answer? And, be honest. You would not be able to marry him, but yet it would be hard to let him go. Peter hasn't enough character yet, not enough willpower, too little courage and strength. He is still a child in his heart of hearts. He is no older than I am. He is only searching for tranquility and happiness. Am I only 14? Am I really still a silly little schoolgirl, Am I really so inexperienced about everything? I have more experience than most. I have been through things that hardly anyone of my age has undergone. I am afraid of myself. I am afraid that in my longing I am giving myself too quickly. How, later on, can it ever go right with other boys? Oh, it is so difficult, always battling with one's heart and reason. In its own time, each will speak. But do I know for certain that I have chosen the right time? Yours, Anne.